Iran's government spokeswoman said, if by regime change, Trump means changing to a new regime of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, then he has been very successful. Yes, I agree. Which is why Trump is now crashing out and ordering a U.S. naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. This was one of the funniest clips I think we've had throughout the entire Iran war. Trump was asked a question by NBC reporters who said, Iran is not listening to your threats about opening the Strait of Hormuz. Take a listen to Trump's response.
How do you know that? Why do you say that?
How do you know that? Why do you say that? I don't know. Because it's still closed, retard. It's literally still closed. No one except for like a few Russian, Chinese, and goodwill was also extended to the Pakistanis. Actually, a few Iraqi ships too. I think it was a good chunk of Iraqi oil was able to pass 2 million barrels or something. But okay, Iranian, Russian, Chinese, Pakistani ships were allowed to pass, and that's it. And you're asking why anyone's asking you that Iran is not listening to threats about opening the Strait of Hormuz. How do you know that?
Why do you say that? You don't know anything. Who are you with?
NBC News, Filling Circuit.
ABC?
NBC.
Well, let's make sure. Let me just tell you, we win, no matter what. We've defeated their military. They have no navy. 158 ships are underwater, undersea. All of their minesweepers and all of their, they call them mine droppers. Can you imagine a country?
Their minesweepers are under the sea. So the Strait of Hormuz, he says, has like a bunch of mines scattered around, but he bombed their minesweepers. That's brilliant.
He has 28 mine droppers. You think that's nice? With all of that.
He said minesweepers, and then he also said mine droppers.
Being said, they're all defeated, by the way. They're all at the bottom of the sea. Now, with all of that, they have no navy. They have no radar. They have no air force. Their leaders are all dead. With Khomeini is gone. For many years, he ruled. He's gone. With all of that, let's see.
Okay, it would have been the funniest clip if he had said, Khomeini is gone. Khomeini is back. But it's a little different. He should at least acknowledge that Khomeini was replaced with Khomeini. Or Khamenei, sorry. He said Khomeini. He said Khomeini, didn't he?
For many years, he ruled. They have no radar. They have no air force. Their leaders are all dead. With Khomeini is gone. For many years, he ruled. He's gone.
The dementia's kicking in. He thinks that he airstriked. Trump thinks he airstriked Ruhollah Khomeini. Incredible. The dementia is kicking in. Really, Tucker's right about that. So, anyways, yes, the Strait of Hormuz is still effectively closed for open and free-flowing travel. Iran's been quite clear that there will be a new regulatory body that governs the Strait of Hormuz. In tandem with the government of Oman, and they will be charging tolls. Already, they are charging tolls. It's been reported that they're charging tolls of up to $2 million per ship, which would equate to $96 billion per year if the strait was operating at full capacity with all these charges in place, okay? So 15 to 20 vessels crossed the Strait of Hormuz over the past 36 hours. Most of the vessels were Chinese, Pakistani, Russian, or Iranian. As I mentioned there, I think there was like 1 or 2 Iraqi ships as well that were allowed to pass. The security chief of Iran, Ibrahim Azizi, said all vessels entering the Strait of Hormuz must pay tolls under our new regulatory system. Everyone's being quite clear about this. Iran to allow about 10 ships per day through the Strait of Hormuz during the ceasefire for fees of up to $2 million. Also, we had a security incident yesterday near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This was 54 nautical miles off the coast of Yemen. A vessel was almost seized by armed hostile forces. It's unclear what went on there, but one can probably imagine what was happening. I love this. Iran's government spokeswoman, Fatima Mohijirani, said, if by regime change, Trump means changing to a new regime of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, then he has been very successful. Yes, I agree. Which is why Trump is now crashing out and ordering a U.S. naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. A U.S. naval blockade. So Iran has a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Now the U.S. says we're also going to do a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump is saying effectively, actually, I think he said this in a quote, we're going all or nothing in Iran, which I think he means we're going all in. Like we're going to do literally everything we can. Probably, I would not be surprised eventually if there's even a ground invasion, right? If they refuse to concede on their demands, which I don't think is likely. Okay, so Trump has ordered a U.S. Navy blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. He has also ordered the Navy to interdict every vessel that pays a toll to Iran to cross the strait, which is objectively hilarious because France and Italy and other countries, South Korea, Japan, they're all negotiating with Iran to try and secure safe passage for their ships through the Strait of Hormuz. So we could have a situation where if the U.S. actually upholds what Trump is demanding, they would be interdicting South Korean, Japanese, Italian, and French-linked ships for simply paying a toll to the Iranians for allowing them to travel through the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's naval blockade against Iran's Strait of Hormuz and Iranian ports officially went into effect starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time not too long ago. German government Merz. The Chancellor Merz announces Berlin's readiness to participate in the protection of international navigation in the Strait of Hormuz after the cessation of hostilities. That's the biggest promise I think we've seen from any Western government, that they will be doing something to try and safeguard Western interests in the Strait of Hormuz. But other than that, we haven't seen much. Dmitry Medvedev, former Russian president, said, while many countries want to de-block the Strait of Hormuz, the White House has decided to block it. Blocking equals de-blocking. Orwell's villains are resurging with a vengeance. What's next? Sure, war is peace. Exactly. Trump was asked today, is your expectation that other countries will assist in the effort to block Iran? Take a listen.
Is it your anticipation, Mr. President, that other countries will assist in this effort to blockade Iran and those?
Yeah, other countries are going to also.
Which countries, sir?
We don't need other countries, frankly, but they've offered the services. We'll let it be known probably tomorrow.
Has the blockade started, sir?
Yeah, started 10 o'clock.
Is it your anticipation?
10 o'clock. Well, yeah, other countries are going to be supporting. The question is who? Germany said no, not until the cessation of hostilities. The UK said it will not take part in the U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz after Trump said literally that the UK will send warships to help, and probably other countries too. Australia has also announced they will not join Trump's blockade against Iran's Strait of Hormuz and Iranian ports. And Iran has said that no port in the Gulf region will be safe if its own ports are threatened as the United States prepares to enforce a blockade. So this is the question. How will Iran respond if the U.S. begins to seize, interdict ships, try to force ships to go back into the Strait of Hormuz that are friendly and pay a toll with the Iranians? Well, that question seems to be answered by this statement right here. It appears as though Gulf state assets will yet again come under the target of Iran if their assets and allies of Iran, their assets, vessels, or whatever, are targeted by the United States Navy in their attempted blockade. Now, the Chinese have indirectly warned the U.S. about the blockade of Hormuz. This is from the Chinese defense minister saying, Chinese ships continue to move in and out of the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. We have trade and energy agreements with Iran, which we will respect and abide by. We expect others not to interfere in our affairs. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz and has opened it to us. Now, that draws upon a bigger point here, that being that, you know, I always think it's funny when people act like China will collapse if they don't have Iranian oil. You realize that China produces more oil than Iran, right? Anyways, 80% or so of the ships that Iran sends out with oil on them are going to China or to Chinese-linked ports somewhere in the world. So if the U.S. were to begin seizing all these Iranian ships with oil on them, they're effectively launching a blockade directly against China. That's what's going on here. Of course, Iran gets a lot of imports. They do a lot of exports, so it's not just oil, right? Iran does, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's about $37 billion monthly, and $13 billion monthly in imports and exports through the Strait of Hormuz. But a lot of that is Chinese. So that begs the question, how will China respond? How will they respond? We know for a fact that China is allegedly, according to U.S. intelligence reports, they are on the cusp of supplying shoulder-fired man-pads to Tehran. Multiple news outlets, including CNN, reported the intelligence assessments earlier today. Trump says that if China sends any weapons to Iran, they will face big problems. How does that make sense? The U.S. is allowed to supply weapons to Ukraine. The U.S. is allowed to supply weapons to Taiwan. The U.S. is allowed to supply weapons to all the Gulf states. And all these countries are waging wars against Russia, against Iran, and want to wage war in the case of Taiwan against China. But if anyone supplies but a single bullet to the Iranians, then they will come under a 50% tariff from the United States. Insane, hypocritical, but what else is new? Trump's comments come amid a fragile ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran, blah, 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 blah. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Trump, yes, he said that he will enforce huge tariffs, and China is going to have big problems if they decide to move forward with that. Oddly enough, though, it seems as though the weapon shipments are probably going to be headed in the other direction, because Iran, in the midst of the rubble and the ashes and the heap of destroyed aircraft that was the U.S. C-130 destruction in Isfahan, Iran, the location of the attempted and failed U.S. uranium heist against the Natanz nuclear facility, Iran recovered a key component of one of the world's most advanced military aviation defense systems from the wreckage of one of those very U.S. C-130 aircraft. The part in question is the movable laser turret from the ANAAQ-24V Nemesis system, better known as LAIRCM, Large Aircraft Infrared Countermeasures. Basically, this is a sophisticated device system, air defense system, designed to protect large transport, refueling, and special operations aircraft from heat-seeking infrared missiles. So there you go. I would not be surprised if this system is going to be on its way to China or Russia very soon, where said countries will then begin to compare their notes, their designs, and comparable devices that they have, and they have, employed on their own aircraft, right? And maybe making some adjustments if need be. Iran was able to take that from the destroyed C-130 and is going to be sending it over to China, I would imagine, very soon. So, well, what is Trump going to do about that? He can't employ tariffs on Iran. He's already sanctioned them into what he believes is oblivion. Now, there was a report not too long ago, this afternoon, that an oil tanker bound for China reportedly forced to turn around due to the U.S. naval blockade. This was per ship tracking data. We have no confirmation of any sort of security incident. No UK MTO security incident was reported. So that's merely speculation. But on the flip side, we also have other reports that there were two tankers which were able to leave the Strait of Hormuz after the start of the U.S. naval blockade that supposedly began, according to Trump, at 10 a.m. Eastern today. The Iranians, Khatam al-Anbiya, they put out several statements today saying, warships are approaching Hormuz. We will deal with them severely. If America starts a ground war, we are going to deploy 1 million of our troops. Also worth noting that Iran's John Fada campaign, where Iranian citizens can sign up for martyrdom to serve their country, full well knowing that they will probably achieve the status of martyrdom, as they refer to it as, reach a record 20 million signups after just 2.5 weeks of the campaign being introduced. They also said no port in the Persian Gulf or the Sea of Oman will be safe. Defending Iran's territorial waters is a national responsibility. As has been previously announced, enemy-affiliated vessels do not and will not have the right to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Other vessels will continue to be allowed to pass in accordance with the regulations of the IRGC Navy. Iran will resolutely implement a permanent mechanism to control the Strait of Hormuz. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran clearly and firmly declare that the security of ports in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman is either for everyone or for no one. If the security of the ports of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the waters of the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman is threatened, no port in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman will be safe. That is from Ibrahim Zolfikari, the spokesperson of Khatam al-Anbiya. We discussed that point. And lastly here, Trump said if any Iranian ship comes anywhere close to our blockade, they will be immediately eliminated. Now, the question I have, to be honest with all of you, is where are these U.S. vessels? Where are they? What are they doing? Where are they? Here's a map for you. So this is, the Strait of Hormuz. Arabian Sea is out here. You can see my mouse. Arabian Sea is out here. Strait of Hormuz is this region right here where it gets very tight. And Persian Gulf up here. The question is, where are these ships? Because this is the map of Iran, right? And you can see the border all the way up here, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan. Okay, we're going down. Now, this is the Baluchistan province of Iran right here. Chabahar is this port right here. So Chabahar and Konarak ports. It has been reported that the Iranians beefed up their military presence in Chabahar and the Konarak port extensively. Now, we don't really know what they have there. Obviously, there was a lot of talk as to what the U.S. plans were for a potential staging operation, creating a forward operating base in the Chabahar, Konarak ports. Obviously, there is a pretty large airport here. It's the only airport within a huge swath of territory, like this much land. There's no other airports. And no other major ports. And there's only about, I think, one or two main roads. The 93 goes into Chabahar, Konarak port. So they did beef up their military presence here. There's obvious questions as to what sort of, what sort of military assets they have. Were they preparing for a forward operating base, or were they preparing for a maritime blockade? I don't know. Point being, if the border of Iran extends all the way up until this point, one would probably assume that it is well within the possibilities of the IRGC to launch surface-to-sea missiles at any ships that would be attempting to establish a blockade, just off the coast here. One would assume that if, Iranian or Iranian allied ships were to travel through the Strait of Hormuz, right, if they were to go through here along the routes that these ships have been following and, right along the coastline, all the way up until the Baluchistan province over here, that if any U.S. vessels or any U.S. speedboats or any U.S. helicopters tried to interdict a ship sailing directly off the coast of Chabahar, it would go really poorly for them. And Iran has any number of options at their disposal to counter a U.S. interdiction directly off the coast of the Baluchistan province, off the coast of Chabahar. We'll see. I'll be following this very closely, but that's why I'm not surprised about these reports of two tankers having left the Strait of Hormuz since the blockade, quote unquote, began. Because how do you enforce something like this? How do you enforce something like this without acknowledging that, of course, you run the risk, a very serious risk, of your ships getting absolutely torched, your aircraft getting torched, your whatever sort of special forces they have that would do these interdictions, right? They'd get torched. I would imagine it'd be pretty easy unless they wait for them to get all the way out here, come back around, and then they send what? Like they send a helicopter, they send drones down here. I mean, that would make sense, I guess. But if they aim to stop them here, so I'll be very interested to see where the staging grounds are for this blockade. We'll have to see. But one thing is for certain, they know that they cannot get past the Strait of Hormuz, let alone Karg Island, which was initially discussed, right? Going all the way up here to Karg Island. That was a ludicrous fucking idea, going all the way up there. That was a suicide mission and a half. They're staying far, far away for very good reason. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.